My name is Bridget, and at 34 years old, I never expected to be a widow. 3 months ago, I lost Adam, my husband of 11 years, to a sudden aneurysm. Just days after his funeral, I forced myself to attend my nephew Lucas's first birthday party, where my sister Cassandra dropped a bombshell. She announced that Lucas was actually Adam's son, waiving a will and claiming half of my $800,000 house. What she didn't realize was why I could barely hold back my laughter. If you're watching this from somewhere where family drama feels familiar, take a moment to like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I handled what came next. Adam and I met 12 years ago at a charity auction benefiting children with cancer. I was volunteering, helping organize the silent auction items, when he outbid everyone else for a painting I had admired all night. It was a watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset, vibrant oranges and purples bleeding into the harbor. After winning, he walked straight over to me and handed it to me. "I noticed you watching this all night," he said, smiling in a way that made his blue eyes crinkle at the corners. "I think it belongs with you." That was Adam, thoughtful, observant, and generous to a fault. I fell hard and fast. We went on our first date the next evening, and it felt like we had known each other our entire lives. He was a corporate attorney, brilliant but humble, the kind of man who remembered the names of waitstaff and asked genuine questions about their lives. 8 months after we met, he proposed on the harbor with the real skyline mirroring the painting that had brought us together. Shortly after our first anniversary, we bought our Victorian home in Beacon Hill. At $800,000, it was a financial stretch, but Adam had just made partner at his firm, and I was building a strong reputation as an interior designer. The house needed work, but it had good bones, high ceilings and a small garden out back where I imagined future children playing. Those children never came, not for lack of trying. For years, we charted, planned, and hoped. Then came the doctors, the tests, the procedures. 4 rounds of IVF drained our savings and our spirits. I still remember the last failed attempt, the quiet drive home from the clinic, Adam reaching across the console to hold my hand. Neither of us spoke because we both knew that was the end of that road. Adam said that night as we sat on our porch swing, "We can still have a beautiful life, you and me. That's enough." And he meant it. We slowly rebuilt our dreams. We traveled, we poured ourselves into our careers, we renovated the house room by room until it became the showcase home I had always imagined. Adam supported me fully when I decided to launch my own interior design firm. Our life was full, different from what we had planned, but still beautiful. My younger sister Cassandra was always in the periphery of our happiness. 4 years younger than me, at 30, she had always been the wild child of the family. While I studied design and built a business, she bounced between jobs and relationships. Our parents constantly worried about her behavior and repeatedly bailing her out of financial troubles. Cassandra and I had a complicated relationship since childhood. She was undeniably beautiful, with effortless charm that drew people in, but there was always an undercurrent of competition on her side. If I achieved something, she had to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, she suddenly became interested in law students. When we bought our house, she complained for months about her apartment, fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. It was exhausting, but Adam encouraged me to maintain the relationship. "She's your only sister," he reminded me. "Family is important." 2 years ago, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a bartender she met while out with friends. He was handsome in a rugged way, with tattoos covering his arms and a motorcycle our parents disapproved of. Their relationship seemed volatile from the outside, filled with dramatic breakups and passionate reconciliations. Then came the pregnancy announcement at Thanksgiving dinner the year before Adam died. It was unexpected, to say the least. Cassandra had never expressed interest in children. In fact, she often mocked my desire for them, calling it giving in to societal expectations. Yet there she was, announcing her pregnancy with theatrical tears and declarations about the miracle of life. I felt the familiar sting of jealousy. After all our struggles and heartbreak, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what we desperately wanted. But I pushed those feelings aside. I was genuinely happy for her and determined to be the best aunt possible to her child. Lucas was born a healthy 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was at the hospital with flowers and a handmade blanket I had spent months knitting. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood from the start, often calling me in tears about Lucas's colic or her exhaustion. I stepped in as much as I could, sometimes watching Lucas overnight so she could sleep. Adam was less involved with Lucas than I was. At the time, I thought it was because of our infertility struggles, that maybe it was too painful for him to bond with a baby that wasn't ours. He was always kind when Cassandra brought Lucas over, but he kept a certain distance that I never questioned. Then came that terrible Tuesday morning. Adam complained of a headache before leaving for work. I suggested he stay home, but he insisted he had an important client meeting. "Just a migraine," he said, kissing me goodbye. "I'll call you after the meeting."
That call never came. Instead, the hospital called. By the time I arrived, he was already gone. Brain aneurysm, they said. Nothing could have been done. He was only 36 years old. The next days passed in a blur of arrangements and grief. Cassandra was strangely absent through most of it, sending text messages claiming Lucas was sick or that she couldn't find a babysitter. When she did appear at the funeral, she stayed only briefly, keeping to herself before leaving ahead of the reception. I was too numb with grief to think much of it at the time. 1 week after we laid Adam to rest, Lucas's first birthday arrived. The last thing I wanted was to attend a children's birthday party, but family obligations weighed heavily. "Adam would want you to go," my mother insisted during one of her daily check-in calls. "He always said family comes first." So I found myself driving to Cassandra's small rental house in a less desirable part of town, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat and dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I had barely slept since Adam's death, spending nights staring at his empty side of the bed, reaching for a warmth that was no longer there. I parked behind a line of cars, took several deep breaths, then grabbed the gift and headed inside. No one should have to fake happiness so soon after losing their husband, I thought, but I plastered on a smile and knocked on the door. Cassandra's friend Jenna opened it, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of me. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, her voice oddly strained. She glanced over her shoulder before stepping aside. "Come in, everyone is in the backyard." The small house was decorated with blue balloons and streamers. A banner stretched across the living room wall. "Happy first birthday, Lucas." I noticed a group of people I didn't recognize clustered in the kitchen, whispering. They fell silent as I passed, their eyes following me. In the backyard, more guests stood in small groups, plastic cups in hand. I spotted my parents sitting stiffly at a picnic table, visibly uncomfortable. My father stood as soon as he saw me, relief washing over his face. "Bridget," he said, embracing me, "we weren't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," I replied, setting the gift on the designated table. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother answered, not quite meeting my eyes. "They should be out soon for the cake." I mingled awkwardly, accepting condolences and deflecting questions about how I was holding up. Everyone seemed tense. Conversations stopped abruptly when I approached. I chalked it up to people not knowing how to behave around a newly minted widow. After 30 uncomfortable minutes, Cassandra emerged from the house carrying Lucas on her hip. She wore a new dress I had never seen before, her hair freshly highlighted. Lucas looked adorable in a tiny button-up shirt and bow tie, his chubby legs kicking with excitement at all the attention. Cassandra barely acknowledged me as she placed him in his high chair. She seemed energized, almost giddy, moving through the yard with unusual confidence. She tapped a plastic spoon against her cup, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lucas's special day," she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." The guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly became very interested in her shoes. "I've been keeping a secret, one that I can no longer hide, especially after recent events." A chill ran down my spine. Something was very wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced, her eyes locking on mine across the yard. "It has Adam's." The world seemed to stop. I heard gasps around me, felt my father stiffen beside me, but it was all background noise to the rushing in my ears. "Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago," she went on, her voice steady and rehearsed. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness for both of us. We never meant to hurt anyone, but these things happen." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. My sister was claiming she had slept with my husband, that her son,
The nephew I had lovingly cared for was actually Adam's child. It was so absurd, I nearly laughed out loud. But Cassandra wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held up the paper. He wanted his son to be provided for. This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget own should go to Lucas as his biological child. Every eye in the yard turned to me. I could see the pity, the morbid curiosity, the discomfort. My parents looked stricken, my father half standing as if unsure whether to intervene. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tug at my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so outrageously false it borders on comical. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the inappropriate laughter bubbling up inside me. "Oh, I see," I said finally, my voice calm and even. I took a sip of water, buying time to push down the urge to laugh in my sister's face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered. Clearly, she hadn't expected this reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document, a typed page with what appeared to be Adam's signature at the bottom. I scanned it quickly, noting inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was all wrong, nothing like the legal documents I had seen Adam bring home. And the signature, though similar, was clearly forged. The connecting stroke between the A and D was wrong. The final flourish, too pronounced. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back to her. "Thank you for sharing this with me.
I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied, calmly, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them soon. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmurs behind me, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Once inside my car, safely out of view, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It started small, then grew, until tears streamed down my face. Not tears of joy, but a strange mix of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief at my sister's audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know, something Adam and I had never shared with anyone, something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful, but impossible. The truth about Adam and Cassandra began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even conceived. We had invited my sister over for dinner to celebrate her new job at a marketing firm, her longest employment to date. Adam had prepared his famous lasagna, and we had opened a good bottle of wine. It was a pleasant evening until I excused myself to take a work call from a client having a design emergency. The call took longer than expected, nearly 20 minutes of walking a wealthy client through hanging artwork. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had shifted. Adam looked uncomfortable, and Cassandra was sitting much closer to him than before, her hand on his arm, laughing at something I hadn't heard. I thought nothing of it at the time. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine had been flowing freely. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Adam seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, sitting on the edge of our bed. "I don't want it to cause problems between you and your sister, but I also don't want to keep secrets from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments about how lucky I was to have him, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he rebuffed her, she laughed it off as a joke, saying I was too sensitive if I thought she was serious. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go as an isolated incident, something caused by wine and her usual competitive nature. But it wasn't isolated. Over the next few months, Cassandra found excuses to touch Adam when I wasn't looking, sent text messages that blurred the line between friendly and flirtatious, and once even showed up at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam gently but firmly held boundaries and told me immediately afterward. After the office incident, we confronted my parents about Cassandra's behavior. It did not go well.
They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures and that Cassandra simply looked up to him as a brother. My mother, with good intentions but terrible judgment, even suggested that perhaps Adam was flattered by the attention and exaggerating the situation. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We would create distance from Cassandra without causing a family rift. We declined invitations that included her, ensured we were never alone with her, and Adam blocked her number on his phone after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins within the scrotum requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery due to the extent of the varicocele and the risk of recurrence. It was a difficult decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this medical information private. Even our parents didn't know. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we had learned to protect our privacy regarding reproductive issues. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and Adam's doctors. After the surgery, as Adam recovered, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. "Cassandra isn't done," he said, sitting in our garden with an ice pack discreetly positioned. "I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day." I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The next week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him, listening as Adam detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James recommended documenting everything: the unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even text messages and emails from Cassandra. "You never know what might become relevant," James advised. "Better to have documentation and never need it than to wish you had it later." We followed his advice, creating a file of everything related to the situation. Adam also updated his will properly through official channels, making sure everything would come to me in the event of his death. James kept copies of all documents, and we placed the originals in a safety deposit box at our bank. "Cassandra, just in case," Adam said when we locked the box. Though I plan to be around to deal with any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who had known Adam and me for years, expressed condolences as he led me to the vault. I sat alone in the small viewing room and opened the box Adam and I had filled with what Adam jokingly called our disaster preparation kit. Inside was exactly what I needed: Adam's legitimate will, notarized and properly executed, leaving everything to me. Medical records detailing his vasectomy 2 years before Lucas's conception, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. A journal Adam had kept, documenting every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, including dates, times, and exact quotes. Printed copies of text messages she had sent him, and a letter from our attorney confirming that he had witnessed Adam's legitimate will and could verify its authenticity. And at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name written in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. "My dearest Bridget, if you are reading this, something has happened to me and you have needed to access these documents. I hope it is many years from now, when we are old and gray and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But if not, if the worst has happened and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I tried to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love, but you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam."
My practical, thoughtful husband had anticipated this. Not the specific scenario, perhaps, but the possibility that Cassandra might try to use his death to her advantage. I carefully returned everything to the box, except what I needed: copies of the medical records, the legitimate will, and selected journal entries. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. James Wilson's law office was in a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of place that exuded old money and discretion. I had only been there a handful of times with Adam, but the receptionist recognized me immediately, her expression softening with sympathy.
"Mrs. Preston," she said, standing to greet me, "Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Please accept my condolences for your loss." James was in his 60s, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He had been Adam's mentor when Adam first joined the firm, and they had maintained a close friendship even after Adam moved to a different practice. He stood as I entered, coming around his desk to embrace me briefly. "Bridget," he said, gesturing for me to sit, "I was devastated to hear about Adam. He was one of the good ones." "He was," I agreed softly, my voice catching. "And it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister." I explained what had happened at the birthday party, showing James the forged will Cassandra had produced. He studied it carefully, his expression tightening with concern. "This is an amateur forgery," he said at last. "The language is wrong, and the signature, while somewhat similar, would never hold up under expert scrutiny. But the fact that she created this owl is very troubling." I then presented the documents from the safety deposit box, the medical records confirming Adam's vasectomy, the legitimate will, and Adam's detailed journal of Cassandra's behavior over the years. "Adam was nothing if not thorough," James remarked as he reviewed them. "These medical records alone disprove her claim about Lucas's paternity. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It is biologically impossible for Adam to be the father. What should I do? I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I can't let her take half of our home based on a lie." James leaned back, considering. "First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator to look into Cassandra's current circumstances. Fraud of this kind usually stems from financial pressure, not just cruelty." He suggested Frank Delaney, a former police detective now working as a private investigator for the firm. I agreed, and James called him immediately, providing only the basics of the situation. Frank arrived within an hour, a stocky man with a Boston accent and a no-nonsense manner. He listened carefully as I described everything, taking notes and asking direct questions about Cassandra's relationships, employment, and finances. That was when I realized how little I truly knew about her life. Since Lucas's birth, our relationship had grown distant. My efforts to be involved as an aunt were often brushed aside or taken for granted. "I'll need a few days," Frank said when I finished. "My initial focus will be her financial situation and her relationship with the child's real father. Is there anything else you can tell me about him?" I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender Cassandra had been dating when she became pregnant. I had only met him a few times, and he had shown little interest in family gatherings. As far as I know, they were still together, but Cassandra rarely mentioned him anymore. I added that he hadn't been at Lucas's birthday party, which struck me as unusual. "That's a good starting point," Frank nodded, jotting it down. "I'll be in touch soon." 3 days later, Frank requested a meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing documents spread across the conference table. "Mrs. Preston," Frank began once we were seated, "I've uncovered some concerning information about your sister." His investigation revealed Cassandra was drowning in debt, over $75,000 spread across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who had required heart surgery shortly after birth. Her credit score was ruined, and she had been denied 3 additional loans in the past month. "She's also facing eviction," Frank continued, sliding a paper toward me. "Here's a copy of the notice her landlord filed last week. She has until the end of the month to pay 4 months of back rent or leave the property." As for Tyler, he had abandoned Cassandra and Lucas not long after the birth, moving to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He contributed only minimal, irregular child support, barely $200 a month. "I also found these," Frank said, producing printed text messages. "They've been talking about her plan for weeks." They were between Cassandra and her friend Jenna, the same woman who had greeted me at the party. The messages were damning. "Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt sick reading the cold calculation in my sister's words. This wasn't desperation. It was premeditated fraud meant to exploit my grief. There's more, Frank added gently. I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the real father. He has prior domestic violence charges from a past relationship and currently has a warrant for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He's not someone you'd want around your nephew. I sat in stunned silence, struggling to process everything. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage to solve her financial problems. And her choice in partners had placed Lucas in a potentially dangerous situation. What do I do with all this? I asked, looking between James and Frank. I can't just expose it all publicly. Lucas is innocent. He's still my nephew. James removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You have several options, Bridget. We could file charges against Cassandra for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties, possibly even jail time, given the amount of money involved. Or, he paused, seeing my distress, we could handle this privately, confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. I left the meeting with a heavy heart and a folder of evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chen, whom I'd been seeing since Adam's death, and scheduled an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I poured everything out. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted.
But Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister. Dr. Chen listened quietly, asking questions about my relationship with Cassandra over the years. It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has been present since childhood, she observed. This situation isn't an anomaly. It's an escalation. What would you do? I asked desperately. I can't make the decision for you, she replied gently. But compassion doesn't mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences. After much reflection, I made a decision. I would confront Cassandra privately with all the evidence, offering her a choice: face potential legal consequences for fraud, or accept a compromise that provided for Lucas while holding her accountable. With renewed determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. We need to talk about the will, I said when she answered. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just you, not Lucas. I knew you'd come around, she replied smugly. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing, arranging the documents in order, and setting up recording equipment on James's advice. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, he had warned me. You can't record secretly, but you can ask her permission at the start, framing it as a way to protect you both. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I steadied myself before opening the door. Cassandra stood on the porch, polished and confident in a new outfit. Come in, I said, leading her to the living room. 2 chairs faced each other across a coffee table where I had set a recorder, water glasses, and the folder of documents. I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation, I said evenly. It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing. Cassandra hesitated only briefly, before nodding. Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, though I think this can be pretty straightforward. The will is clear. I turned on the recorder, stating the date and time, and confirming her consent. Then I leaned back, studying her face. Before we discuss the will, I want to understand exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam. Cassandra launched into a rehearsed story about a supposed affair 2 years ago. According to her, she and Adam had connected during a rough patch in our marriage, though there had been no such rough patch. She claimed they met several times at a downtown hotel, that Adam confessed his unhappiness, and that Lucas was conceived during those encounters. "He always meant to tell you," she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. I listened without interrupting, noting the inconsistencies in her timeline and the details that contradicted Adam's actual schedule. When she finished, I began asking questions. "Which hotel did you meet at?" "The Mandarin Oriental," she answered quickly. "And what room?" She faltered. "It was on a high floor. I don't recall the exact number." "What days of the week did you usually meet?" "Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays." "When he told me he was working late, what did he typically order from room service? Which side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after?" I pushed for details only someone truly intimate with Adam would know. Cassandra grew increasingly flustered, her answers vague and contradictory. "Why does any of this matter?" she finally snapped. "The point is that Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him." "Actually," I said calmly, opening my folder, "both of those claims are demonstrably false." I placed the medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam underwent a vasectomy following surgery for varicocele. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the medical records with trembling hands, scanning the clinical language and dates. "These could be faked," she said weakly. "They are not, and Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary. But that is just the beginning. Next, I produced the legitimate will, notarized and properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, prepared by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me with no mention of Lucas." Cassandra's confidence was visibly crumbling, but she tried to rally. "He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent." "The will you have," I said evenly, "is a forgery. A poor one, I might add. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. Creating a fraudulent will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison." I continued methodically presenting evidence. Adam's journal documenting her inappropriate advances, the text messages between her and Jenna discussing the plan, and, finally, Frank's investigative report detailing her financial troubles, eviction notice, and Tyler's abandonment. "We know everything, Cassandra," I said as she sat in stunned silence. "The question now is what happens next." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears I had seen her use to manipulate our parents, but deep, body-racking sobs. "I didn't know what else to do," she finally said between gasps. "I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house." "So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation?" I asked, my voice hardening. "To tell everyone he cheated on me? To forge legal documents?" "I was desperate," she shouted, her sadness turning to anger. "You have everything. This big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation." Her outburst hung in the air between us. The raw honesty of it, stripped of manipulation and lies, reached something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. "Lucas is Tyler's son, isn't he?" I asked, more gently. She nodded. "Yes. Adam never touched me, not like that. I did try with him years ago, but he always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. As for the will, my friend Dave helped me create it.
He does graphic design and thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you'd actually look into it so thoroughly." I turned off the recorder and sat back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched me nervously, clearly expecting the worst. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. I know. But that would hurt Lucas, I continued. And despite everything, he is my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. So, here's what's going to happen. You are going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair, that Lucas is not Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You will apologize publicly to me and to Adam's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small. We'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I will help you and Lucas. Not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs, and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that, after what I did? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. But there will be conditions. You will enter therapy and financial counseling. You will maintain steady employment, and you will allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he is being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I don't deserve your help, she finally said. No, I agreed. You don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care, and I deserve to have my husband's memory untarnished. This solution gives us both what we need. After further discussion of the details, Cassandra agreed to my terms. We would meet with James the next day to formalize the agreement, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. As I showed her out, she paused at the door. I really am sorry, Bridget. I've been jealous of you my whole life. Everything always seemed to come so easily to you. Nothing about my life has been easy. You just never bothered to look past the surface. Maybe it's time you started. The family dinner I arranged for Saturday evening was tense from the start. My parents arrived early, my mother bringing her signature lasagna as a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she said as she set the dish on my counter, but Cassandra has been calling us in tears, saying you're forcing her to come to some sort of family meeting. Just wait until everyone is here, I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7 o'clock, we were all seated around my dining room table. My parents, Cassandra, without Lucas, who was with a babysitter, and me. James had advised me to record this conversation as well, and a small recorder sat in the center of the table. Thank you all for coming, I began, after explaining the recording. I've asked Cassandra to share some important information with you. Cassandra? My sister looked pale and uncomfortable, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. She stared down at her plate as she spoke. I lied about Lucas being Adam's son. Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party. My parents stared at her in shock. But why would you do such a thing? My father demanded. Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister, to Adam's reputation? Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation, her voice gaining strength as she detailed the mounting debts, Tyler's abandonment, and the eviction notice. As she spoke, I could see my mother's expression shifting from shock to sympathy. Oh, honey, my mother said when Cassandra finished. Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies. Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house. Of course we couldn't give you that kind of money, but we could have helped with the rent, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to try to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband. I know it was wrong, Cassandra admitted. Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted. My mother turned to me in alarm. You wouldn't do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget? I felt a flash of frustration at her immediate defense of Cassandra, even now. I could, I said firmly. What she did was not just immoral, but illegal. Forgery and fraud
are felonies. But she's family, my mother insisted.
And she has Lucas to think about. I'm family too, I replied, my voice rising slightly. Your daughter too? The one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity? Where was your concern for me in all this? My father looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Of course we care about you, Bridget, but Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance. And whose fault is that? I asked. You've been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you had let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior. My mother gasped. That is hardly fair, Bridget. We've always treated you girls equally. Cassandra, surprisingly, shook her head. No, Mom, you haven't. Bridget's right. You always made excuses for me, always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. My parents looked stunned at this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility rather than deflecting blame. So what happens now? My father asked, looking between us. Is Cassandra going to jail? No, I said. I've decided not to press charges, under certain conditions. I outlined the agreement Cassandra and I had reached with James's help. The trust fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, and the condition of steady employment. That's very generous, my father said, looking relieved, especially after what she did. It's more than generous, Cassandra agreed quietly. It's more than I deserve. Well, my mother said, brightening, this is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized, Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us. It's not that simple, Mom, I said firmly. Trust has been broken here. Healing will take time, if it happens at all. And there need to be boundaries going forward. What kind of boundaries? She asked, looking worried. For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that doesn't perpetuate dependency. My father nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I'll be involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him, but Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time. My mother looked distressed. But we're family. We need to stick together, especially now. Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse, Mom, I said gently. What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family. The remainder of the dinner was subdued, with my parents processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too. My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we had. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. I really am sorry, she said again. Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything. For the years of competition and jealousy. For not being the sister you deserved. I know. And I hope that therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I considered the question carefully. I don't know, I answered truthfully, but I'm willing to see where this new path takes us. For Lucas's sake, and maybe someday for ours too. The drive home with my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same, but perhaps in time, it could become something healthier, built on honesty rather than illusion.